by a show of hands here in the chat, put a 1 if you've been following this case. Put a 2 if you never heard about this case. Rachel Morin, 37 years young, a mother of 5. Her life brutally taken from her by a unknown male Hispanic perpetrator. He's 5'9", 160 pounds, from arguably from that California area. We're going to dive into it. So a lot of number ones, some number twos. We're going to let the press conference roll. But Ed, I wanted to talk to you because you're a crime scene and CSI expert. In a case like this where you have a brutal, murder of an individual out in the open, recovered relatively quick, could you walk the audience through what crime scene investigators from the Maryland State Crime Lab did on this case or should have done on this case?
Well, she was found along a running path that she normally utilized for exercise, and apparently, broadcasted this information on all her social media and so forth. And again, she was brutally assaulted and found off the path in a area. So again, outdoor environment, but relatively short period of time between reported missing and found. So less a chance for environmental factors and decomp and critters and scavenging and things of that nature. You get to this body, you get to the scene, you have to understand the path. You're going to look for signs of movement on the path, footwear impressions, and then off the path, any signs of trace or what we call sign, the indigenous plant life being disturbed, any transfer of hairs and fibers onto the plants and away from the plants, soil, footwear impressions, all of these things out there off the path in the wooded areas. Then you're going to obviously you're going to document everything, photograph, sketch, take a lot of notes. You're going to obviously take temperature, environmental temperature, the ambient temperature. Then later, the medical examiner's personnel will take the body temperature and try to determine a time of death. Look at rigor mortis, liver mortis, all these things, the settling of the blood to determine if this is the position the body was in fact killed and left in, or was this a transfer position with mixed lividity, and that's where the blood will pool to the bottom of the victim's body based on gravity and so forth. If it over time it will fix, but if the body is killed one place and then let to stay there for a little bit and then move to another place, you may have, and positioned differently than the original location, you may have two sets of lividity. You'll look for that. You're going to photograph the body, head to toe, toe to head, whole 9 yards, everything around there. You're going to search everything around there. You're going to search the body for hairs and fibers. You're going to search the body for bruising on the skin that may be indicative of grabbing and leaving fingerprints and DNA on the skin. You're going to use alternate light sources, infrared photography, to try to find these bruising areas and then search them for fingerprints, search the skin for fingerprints, search the body and the clothing for hairs and fibers. You're going to take exemplars of her clothing so that you can document those types of fibers, because you could potentially find those fibers on the suspect due to the cards exchange principle. You're going to take soil samples as well, especially along the path that led to the body from the fixed path of the park to where the body was deposited, and grab some soil samples there in hopes that you can find that trace evidence on the suspect as well.
Ed, I got a question for you. Would they use the Faro 3D laser scanner if it was available, if it was in the toolbox?
Absolutely, I would, 100%. I would document the whole path and then leading to the victim and everything around the victim. All of that would be 3D laser scanned if I had access to it.
Right.
Definitely would not do otherwise.
Right.
And then getting back to the victim, you're going to bag the hands. All right. You should not try to perform any visual examination of what's underneath the fingertips in the field like this. Bag the hands with paper bags, tie the paper bags to the wrist with tape, and at a fixed medical examiner's facility, then do scrapings underneath the fingernails. I understand there was a horrific assault involved in here. Then you would want to find that murder weapon, package that up. You want to search that murder weapon for fingerprints, DNA, hairs and fibers, and things of that nature. Um, and and now we know that they in fact did DNA work, and they from in Maryland they found the DNA profile of a male, unknown male, Hispanic. Put the DNA into CODIS. Remember, CODIS stands for the Combined Offender DNA Index System. Now, there's two sets of databases in CODIS. The first database is the offender database, known perps that are in there, okay? And then there's the unidentified database from crime scenes. Well, they ran the genetic profile they obtained from the DNA material from the victim into the CODIS system. Nothing popped on the known offender database, but on the unknown crime scene database, they matched an unknown male Hispanic from a crime in Los Angeles involving a teenager in a home invasion, robbery, and assault.
Yes, in South Central Los Angeles. And that leads me to believe, Ed, and you know, as investigators, we do not have access to the case file as retired investigators, but we know for sure that, you know, when you look at this case and you see someone who committed this heinous crime in California, it was a home invasion. We don't have the particulars. They're not releasing, LAPD is not releasing the specifics, whether it was a sexual assault. They just said an assault of a 14-year-old. And now we go straight across the country into Maryland, in a remote area in Maryland. Well, not so much remote, but in a nice, quiet place in Maryland. I feel like in my spidey sense as a detective says that this guy didn't just randomly go across the country or was visiting somebody on the East Coast and then just stumbled into this young woman. I believe that he may have, and this is my belief, that he may have seen her social media presence and had some type of communication. Now, the detectives and everyone who's involved in this case, now we know FBI is involved because they need their expertise in the forensics field and all of the things that they can offer.
In a case like this, it's usually the boyfriend or a husband, okay? That's the statistics. But in this case, you would be 100% wrong, as we see now. Now, I also want to add something else here about statutes of limitation. While there's no statutes of limitation on a homicide, there are statutes of limitation on a home invasion robbery, on assault, on sex crimes, okay? Now, what they can do now, in Los Angeles at least, is they can indict the DNA profile. So this way, it stops the clock on the statutes of limitation. So whenever they find this perp, he can be held accountable for that crime in Los Angeles. Let's say he flees the country and he stays out of law enforcement hands for years. Well, then the statutes of limitation on that case, if they don't indict the DNA, would mean that we couldn't prosecute him once we found them. Okay, so if we indict the DNA now, he will be held responsible no matter when we catch him.
Do you feel that that's something that they will do, indict the DNA?
They should do it. There's no reason they can't do it. You just walk into a grand jury, present the case, okay, have the witness testify, show the forensic analysis and the DNA and the CODIS hit, boom, indicted.
Right, right. And that's something that may be coming down the pipeline in the near future in this case, because I know, and you know, that there are multiple detectives from multiple agencies. Now we know they reached out to the FBI. The family attorney who's representing Rachel Morin's family, her and her family, and don't forget she has 5 children, you know, not adults. She has 5 kids. Sure.
What I saw on that show was totally irresponsible. Okay, there's no reason that those kind of horrific details needed to be aired, and I don't understand it. I don't agree with it, and I think it's ethically inappropriate and and unnecessary, and for the victim's family, totally insensitive.
I agree, and the press has their stories that they have to get out, and they don't. as much as they want to say that they have empathy and they care about the victims and their families, I mean, some of them do, but a great deal of them, you know, the producers who are behind it and the people who are in the control room, they have a job to do. And unfortunately, that's not what we do here. But, you know, we see this, we report on it, and it is what it is. So, again, thank you for that, Ed, because we emphasize all the time to support the victims and their families, because nobody knows what they're going through. And the horror, these 5 children are now motherless. Their mom is gone since August 5th, 18 days. It's horrific. So a lot of people are saying thank you, typical media. You know, New Jersey, Robin says, Ed Wallace, I so agree with you and Ron on this one. And we echo this. This sentiment is echoed on every one of our live streams. You know, people are going to come up with their theories and their thoughts and finger pointing and news groups and Facebook groups.
Now, there's also a lot of things they can do with that imagery. You know, they can isolate it, they can enhance it, they can try to get the facial features out there. And then they need to publicize this. They need to get this guy's face out there all over the networks in all over the country, to be quite honest with you, because obviously this guy can travel from the West Coast to East Coast like this.
Right.
So we got to get that face out there for all to see on our venue, on all the media, on you know, America's Most Wanted, whatever. That face needs to get out there for everybody to see, because if this guy's transiting back and forth from the East Coast to the West Coast, he's going to make stops along the way in different states, maybe to get gas or get food or go to the bathroom, whatever the case be. We need all the eyes out there looking for this guy.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Ed.